We're recording the interview of Jay Blunt. The interview is being conducted by Jeremy Dobbins and Jennifer Seavey from Wright State University's Veterans Voices Project. In attendance is Basim Blunt. This interview is being recorded at WYSO in Yellow Springs, Ohio. It's 1:30 p.m. on November 11th, 2016. So to start out, Jay, can you just tell me where and when you were born?
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in June 1950.
Okay. What were your parents' names? And
James and Alice Blunt.
okay. Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have it's my brother Basim, and then I have a sister Avril, a brother Chris, and a brother Michael.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay. What were you doing before you joined the military, before you entered the service?
Having fun in high school. Yeah, enjoying myself, having a good time. Yeah.
Which branch of the military did you serve in?
Well, I went in the Marine Corps in January 1969. I spent 4 years with the Marines and a brief time with the National Guard, and then I went in the Navy, where I spent the next 16 years.
So you enlisted or were you drafted?
I was enlisted. I enlisted when I was in high school. The kids a lot of my friends had dropped out and went into the military. When I graduated from high school, they were coming back. And that what I wanted was a GI Bill. I wasn't paying that much attention to what was going on in Vietnam at the time. There was enough things going on in 1968 with Martin Luther King and Kennedy and stuff like that. I just wanted to get off the street. And so these guys that came back, when they would tell me about their experiences, and I just thought it was the right thing to do. So I went in, and that's how I started.
Yeah, I think that's how most Marines start out. Just like it kind of seemed like the thing to do at the time.
Yeah.
So where did you go to boot camp at?
I went to Parris Island in that winter, that January. We got in. It was the first time I'd ever gone that far down south. We got on trains in Newark and traveled all the way to Parris Island, South Carolina, and it was an experience. It was for an inner city kid. It was a very eye-opening experience going to Parris Island. Yeah. So it was. I don't know. It's a strange place. It's it's surrounded by swamps, and it's just like you can't get away. There's no way to get away. You're there, and all you want to do is get out of there once you get there. So that's how that went.
Did they still have the back then? There was still only one bridge in and out, right?
One bridge.
That's
in and
how
out.
it is today, also.
Yeah.
Did they threaten you with the alligators and sharks when you arrived?
Oh boy, did they! One of the things that happened, we had every Marine's got to be able to fire his weapon. At that time, we didn't have. We had M14s, which is a really archaic gun, and when we first got on the range, I was, kind of playing around, and I got sent to what's called a straighten up my attitude type thing, and they march you. They get you up early in the morning, tie your shoelaces, one shoe to the other, and march around the island, so you can see what happens if you try to escape, where the swamps were and stuff like that. And the straight jacked out pretty good. I went back to the rifle range, did well. So, it was a scary place.
Yeah. Were the sand fleas real bad when you were there also?
No, I was there in the wintertime, and believe it or not, we had snow one day, which I couldn't, it was hard to fathom it snowing out there, but it actually snowed one day. And I got so cold that we were on the rifle range that day, and my finger, I lost a glove, and my finger got stuck to the trigger. And it was horrible experience trying to hold on to that weapon and the cold making your hand stick to it. And you don't know what to do. You can't, you can't cry about nothing. You can't complain. You just like suck it up and just keep on going.
When you were done with Paris Island, did you get any other training before you went to your unit, or did you go straight to your unit?
No, we went to, they had an ITR back at that time, an infantry training regiment, where it seems like you just walked around all day long with this rifle. And sometimes you'd be doing 13-mile just marches, just marches. But it was kind of like you got a day off one day to go see to a little town called Jacksonville right outside of, and you get to see like the Sands of Iwo Jima and a lot of John Wayne stuff. And the best thing about the whole thing is like if you were lucky, you got there on a day and they had the USO there, and the USO would play music for us and stuff. But then it was just training. You went from one training in North Carolina, and they sent you to California, we did some more training. And you climb mountains and, just, that was it. It was, you practice what you were going to do when you got to Vietnam, which was really like, I don't know why, you weren't going to do any of that. Each time when you got there, everything was so different from what you imagined it would be. No matter how many people told you about it before you got there, everybody's experience was different. It was very different. One day you fly off from California, and before you know it, you're in another time zone. They send you to a place. They send you to Okinawa, and you watching planes going off on bombing raids in Vietnam, and you're just like, clear the way for me, guys. I'm coming. And when you get there, it's like, oh my God, like, what did I get myself into? And then you try to do the best you can from there on. The good thing is that most of us were like 18, 19, 20 years old. And that gave us a certain type of camaraderie. We all had just either gotten out of high school or some of them had dropped out of college. But we had, we still had that teenage bit in us still. It just seemed like the other day you were at the prom, and now here you are. And so that's all you talked about. You talked about when I get back, and not realizing that when you get back you're going to be an adult, and whatever you thought you were going to do, those days are gone. It was just memories of how it was. When you get back, you're going to be a grown man, and people won't. Your life will just be another life and another day in life of whoever you are. So the hardest thing was probably coming back. That was the hardest thing to do. When you get back, you don't have the structure, and you can't, you just don't have the same type of life anymore. It's different. And nobody tells you. The sad thing about Vietnam, they took the veterans. You leave Vietnam, they would send you to Okinawa for a couple days, and then drop you back off on the street. Nobody knew what the heck you were talking about when you got home. You were the most lost person because, no one was there to help you. And then I went back to the inner city that I came from, and the veterans that were there, they had already become different. Some of them had moved on, some of them had just become drug addicts, and there was a lot of problems because they didn't know what to do next. Like I said, one day you were in high school, the next day you were in Vietnam. And so the best thing, I went back in the service because I wanted to go back to Vietnam. I was better off in Vietnam than I was on the street. And that's how I saw it then. So I went back in the military.
That sentiment is, I can't tell you how many guys since then have kind of experienced that almost like word for word, just a different generation.
Right.
But the whole, like you said, the structure's gone. In Vietnam, you transitioned in and out individually though, didn't you? It wasn't like the company would go,
No.
the company would come back.
No, here's what would happen. We all got there, and then we would leave. Like we left training in California, and the guys that I were on the plane with, I don't know what happened to them. They spread us out all over the place. I worked in a headquarters company, and what would happen is at headquarters company we would try to support the guys who were out in the field, and this is a good thing about being young. It's because like the guys that would go out and you when they would come back, some would come back and some wouldn't. And you would just keep on going like nothing had happened. Like you know this person today and you were talking to them, and when they didn't show back up, you would just think to yourself, well, they must have found a way back home. You wouldn't ask any questions. You would just try to forget about it and keep on working. And the harder you work, it made it go easier for you. When I got home, I pretty much put Vietnam back. Everybody I met, I just put it out of my mind because like I didn't know what would happen or what happened to them, and I would hope that they made it back. As a civilian, I retired from the government working for the VA. And I knew it was time to retire when a Vietnam veteran came to me. I used to do autopsies, and the Vietnam veteran was on my table. And I swore it was the sergeant that I worked with in Vietnam. And I said, well, we made it back. I'm talking to a corpse. I'm talking about, well, we made it back. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. It was the first time I had remembered Vietnam. It just came back to me, and it was like, ugh. It's a place you don't want. This is a place you just try to put out of your mind. Otherwise, you'll walk around with that depression, or nobody understands me feeling, and you have to just make a new life for yourself. And that's what you have to do. You have to come back and figure out how to make a new life. So put that hole behind you. And it's so few people that actually get to experience that. So it's kind of like your own. It's something that you have in you that you can't express to nobody else. You just can't express it.
One thing I thought was weird when I came back from the Marine Corps was that, like you said, you yourself are changed in like deep and permanent ways
Right.
that you really can't you can't explain to yourself, yet alone anybody else. But the world around you hasn't really changed that much, because for me it had been about 2 years, and everybody else is just kind of doing the same old thing, and you come back with a whole different set of experiences and perspective. You're like, like you said, you
Yeah.
felt like you were kind of drifting. I didn't know what to do with myself either.
Well, I deployed a lot. I went to Japan and the Philippines. I got to live in a lot of different countries. Every time I came back, things were different. When I left the first time, it was a kind of hippie society in '68. When I came back, everybody was when I left, it was Marvin Gaye and Joan Baez, and when I came back, it was Michael Jackson and a whole something else different. And then when you deploy, every time you come back, things have changed. Everything has changed except for you. You come back and the people were wearing different clothes and a new, you don't know what's hip and new, and you have to learn all over again every time you do it. But that was part of the fun of deploying, because like you go to some place that was totally different. You live there for a while. You get to know people. You get to know people in Korea, and you get to know people in Japan, and you get to know people everywhere. And then you come back to the States, and life goes on. So you're just like kind of stuck wherever you left. When you come back, you got to catch up. I got married and had kids, and come back and the kids would be like a little bigger. And they were like, well, Dad, and they tell you what you missed, so you always were never the really cool dad, you were just kind of like that guy in the service, and people would say like, your dad's mean because think differently, and it's like, nah, it's, you want to do macho things, and they live in a real world, So it was cool. It took a little while to learn, but I raised three good boys, and I've got beautiful grandchildren, so it was all worth it. It was all worth it.
When were your children born?
I have one that was born when I first got back from Vietnam, in 1971, and then I had another one in 1974, and then I went to Japan. It seems like every time I made a deployment and came back, my wife was pregnant. And it was like the first thing we did was get pregnant, and which is cool. You'd be gone for a long time, so it made our marriage good because because we really would appreciate each other, and who else? My wife has been with me the whole trip, and we've seen the whole world together. We did California, and we did all these places and learned all these different things. The hardest thing was, and that when you get out of the service, your family gets out too. And that was the hardest thing because our civilian life was not the same, and people were just different, and we were different. We had experiences all over the place. The people have different, like the things that people talk about now, like this new Muslim thing. While you're in the military, the guy next to you might be from India. And so it's, you can't be that way. You got to be with these people. And we were laughing about this picture here because the guy in the picture is a guy named Sanchez. Was the first Mexican American I'd ever met, and we served time in Vietnam together. And we did most of the time. And so when I come back, and people are having this discussion, I'm like, how do they see people? I see them differently because I had to live there. We had to support each other. The one thing about the military, they can command you not to be racist, period. And so this will be your partner. This will be the person you're going to work with. This is the person you're going to live with for whatever time you're wherever you are. And so when you come back home, you're like, people say sounds like the dumbest things, and I'm like, well, it's sad because you don't know. And that is one of the good things about being in the military, because they will, whatever your problem is, get over it. Leave it at the door. This is what we're going to do. And you have to get to, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to get used to that guy to your left and to your right, and deal with him. And that's it. I don't know. It's a different thing being, like I said, it's a different thing. I see people get upset about things. The one good thing, I don't have any problems. I think that I'm about as much American as anybody else in this country. I know my family's been here before there was a American Revolution. I stand on their shoulders. I had relatives who had been to World War I and the Spanish-American War, and I enjoyed representing my country, and it was a great thing to do. I remember riding on a train in Japan, and I was just going to take a tour of Japan while I was there. And the train I took a local train, and it was stopping different places. And a group of kids, Japanese kids, they saw me on the train on the platform, and the kid didn't know what to say. And so he started saying, Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson. And everybody looked at and there I was on the window, like, okay, but it was great because, like, when I would go to different places, not only would I be a black person in a strange place, but I would be an American. And I don't want to be an ugly American. So I would be my best, on my best behavior to represent my point of view. And I am so glad I live in this democracy. People can't imagine how great our laws and our democracy is unless you're gone someplace else and have to experience something else that's not like ours. And you have to remember that we can't push our way onto everybody else. We're the new guys on the block. These countries have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and we've been around a couple hundred. So I think we got the best thing going since sliced bread, but I can't push that on everybody else. So that's how I feel about it. And so I don't know, over the years it changed. When I was young, I had one idea. When I was 18, I was bold and ready, and as I grew older, as time went on, and I got to just realize what the world was like, and I felt very privileged to have that life, that whole time span in the military. Some of it was scary. A lot of it was really scary, but some of it was rewarding beyond belief. It was a privilege. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You talked about like the military forcing you to not be racist. When I went through boot camp, there were two guys. One was a big black guy from New York City, and then another was from somewhere down south. I want to say Alabama,
Alabama,
or
probably,
or Mississippi, or something like that. And they started out as they were across the breezeway or whatever, the walkway from each other, because the boot camp hasn't really changed. I'm pretty sure it's the same building still, for the most part. But they got in a big fight and whatnot in the wet room or the rain room, the shower room.
Yeah, the shower room.
And they ended up getting forced. They had to do everything together. They're like, well, from now on, you two are. If one's pooping, you're pooping too. Like,
yeah.
If one's on fire watch, you're on fire watch too. If one's at chow, you're at chow too. And it's funny because, like you said, at the time, everyone's kind of like, oh, they're just doing that because they're fighting. But you don't realize it. But when you're in situations where your lives depend on each other, there's just no room for anything like that.
No. Well, what happens? Like, they're good for that. When I came in when I went in the Marine Corps, my drill instructor was from Alabama, and he hated New York Marines. It was like, if we couldn't walk right, we couldn't do anything right. And I don't know if you had the house mouse.
Yeah, they're usually the smallest
guy.
Yeah.
Well, the house mouse was between me and a guy from Kentucky or someplace. And so one of us couldn't be the mouse, the other one, he's going to call the other one the roach. And the thing was, we started arguing, they would make one of us roll around the ground like a roach, and the other one put his hand on his head and spray us like he was Raid. And it was so embarrassing that we just look at each other like, no, ain't can't get mad at you, because it's it might pay a bad consequence for it. But by the end, by the time we graduated from boot camp, we were the best of friends. It was really, it was. And I had another guy at my boot camp. Couldn't read or write, but during the time of Vietnam, if you put an X down, they take you. And he was the best shooter. He was the best. And one day he asked me to write a letter for him because he couldn't write. And it was the first time he had ever asked a black person to do anything for him. And we sat down, we had this great talk. And it was a great experience. And I wrote him a little letter. It didn't sound much different from the kind of things I would say to my mom and my family. And I got the letter out, and I don't know how he made out. Like I said, everybody got separated before we got to Vietnam. But I think about him all the time because, like, he was just like he just needed somebody. He just needed to break through that wherever he came from. You know, some of these guys come from deep backwoods and they don't see the world. They only hear it on TV. And so when you get to some place like boot camp, they got another picture. They got a picture of what they've seen on TV. They don't really know you. You don't know them. And boot camp is the one place where you'll get to know somebody on a very intimate basis, because you gotta eat, sleep, shower. Everything you do is with this person. And so it's, like I said, you walk out of there and it's like going from your everyday military life. When you walk out there, it's like going into the Twilight Zone, because you don't know what the rest of the world's going to do. You know what you're going to do. You always know what you're going to do as long as you got that uniform going. So the structure is so different. One's like a little socialist world taking care of democracy, you know, and you're glad to do it.
Yeah.
I really get glad to do it.
We had one of my friends had a joke. He was like, "You only have to make one decision ever. You make one decision in the military ever, and that's to show up the first time. After that, every decision's made for you.
Yeah, that's it.
You just have to show up once. They'll take care of the rest."
You know, it's really good because, like, the discipline gets you out of some hairy situations. We used to, in the 60s, hitchhiking was what we did. When I got to Vietnam, if I wanted to go from one point to the other, I actually got out there and hitchhiked. I don't know, like I said, I'm 18 years old, so I'm not the brightest bulb, you know, but hitchhiking, I'd be hitchhiking right across Vietnam. You know, I'd hitchhike from Marble Mountain to Da Nang. And, you know, like you find yourself, you wouldn't realize where you were. I don't know, you feel free because you're an American. And then you'll wind up in a spot and you look around and you realize, like, this isn't going to work. I'm in the wrong place, you know. And you don't want anybody to walk up to you and start a conversation because they know you're in the wrong place. They know, like, you know, you know, like it's not the schoolyard. Somebody's going to bully me. That's not going to be cool. And you start thinking. You really begin to think, like, how am I going to get out of here? You hope that you make it out of here. And then what's really crazy, because you're so young, you'll do the same thing over again. You'll take the same chances over and over again. And I think about all the times I was hitchhiking. You know, I can't even hitchhike in my own country anymore, let alone hitchhike. I hitchhiked in Korea. I hitchhiked through Japan. I just, you know, that was the way I thought. I realized my kids don't have that freedom. They don't have that freedom at all. It's, you know, it's just gone. The freedom is gone. There are some things that are good about the 60s, and there are some things that there's a lot improvement, but we lost some things. Youth lost its freedom, and that's sad. My kids will never be as free as I was. Their kids probably won't be as free as they were. So that's something that we have to maybe go back and look at again, you know, how we evaluate what we call freedom, and then do something. Everybody needs to do something. I wish I could, you can't push everybody through boot camp, but they need some experience to force them to see one another's viewpoint.
Yeah. Did you when you were in Vietnam, you said that everybody you went through training with, you kind of got separated and disseminated into different units.
Yeah.
Once you got to your unit, did you make any like close friendships there, or? At
first, the unit I went to, they had a little ceremony for newbies, and they would you either got rocket watch, which you really look stupid. You're standing on a tin roof looking for rockets. No, or they would have in the boot, where they would take all this warm beer and pour it in a boot and try to drink it out of a boot. The first time I was in Vietnam, I think I got so drunk
We're returning after a brief break. So yeah, you said you kind of showed up, you didn't have friends.
No,
You woke up with them.
Oh, that's pretty much it. I had my first time I went to, we had like a made up little club. And you could sit there and listen to music. Usually the music was always the same. It was like, we'll never get out of it. Or, well, it was always Tammy Wynette with Divorce. I heard that over and over again. We got to get out of this place. They played it. And everybody would go crazy, and they start drinking warm beer. And next thing I know, like the first night, maybe the second night I was there, they passed enough beers down to me, and I was about 2 beers worth. And by beer 4, I was on the floor. And then somebody would pick me up, and they would take you to the latrine, and then take you to bed. And after about 3 or 4 days, you were like, okay, I remember you picking me up, and I remember you putting me in bed, and nothing too much. You would just you get up 5 o'clock the next morning, and you'd have to be where you had to be, and you stand out there trying to stand up, and Sarge would be taking whatever, passing whatever information on, and you like, I won't do that again. But the next night, you'll be with the guys, and you're doing it again, and so after a few of those, you get to. It's different because, like I said, I was in the headquarters company, so some days we would have like spaghetti westerns. We watched a lot of spaghetti westerns, and we sit out there at night and warm beer, Clint Eastwood, stale popcorn, and be having a good time. And then the crowd would change. The crowd would actually change according to what mission they had to go out and do. And you wait to see who would come back. And you didn't make too close of friends because, like, you didn't know. I remember the guys who didn't come back. And I remember, like that was just like things I didn't want to think about. And so I put when I came back from Vietnam, I just put that whole thing out of my mind. There were a few people in my platoon that I don't know what happened to them. Like it was like they were here today and gone tomorrow. We go out. One of the things I used to love to do, we used to fry chicken. We had a fried chicken day where we invited all the Vietnamese people from the surrounding area to come in and have some fried chicken. And it was like a great party. It's like I didn't know that chicken could be so. It was just great. They'd come in and we'd have fried chicken and everybody'd be having a good time. Or we'd have smokers. And smokers were 2 Marines boxing each other on this little thing, and people would be there, and that would be like. But then when those were over and they went back to whatever they were doing, you didn't know who was coming back. I had the first person I ever met, the first black person I ever met that wasn't a family member of mine, named Blunt, I met in Vietnam. And Blunt was a demolition guy. And every time he went out, I'd freak out because I'd be hoping that he'd make it back. And I think that's where I developed an attitude where I'm not going to think about this anymore. He makes it back, okay. I don't know if he made it back or not. It's one of those people that just disappeared. And so, okay, that I take for granted he made it back. I have a cap that I wear, and it's Vietnam boonie cap, and it's got Branson Homecoming, Brandon, and Brandon was a guy that I do remember from boot camp training. I met him in Vietnam, and one day we had a good time. We went to Da Nang, went to China Beach, and had a good time. I never saw him again. And when I saw this cap, I think the guy died in 2008 or 9. And I don't know if it was him or not, but I wear the cap because his name is on it, and I remember him from Vietnam. It's one of the few people I actually remember. You know, so yeah. Like I said, I had to put that out of my. I put Vietnam out of my mind because I don't know who made it and who didn't. And the guys I know didn't make it. I won't go to Washington. If I go to Washington, I won't go to the memorial because I don't want to see that. I just want to be standing just crying. And then when I was, like I said, I retired from the government. I was working at Wright Pat. And when they went to Desert Storm, I just stood there and cried. I didn't know what to think. It was like, because I looked at all those young people and I was hoping, like, God, I hope they all make it back. And that's the part that people don't realize. You have to, these are good friends you make in a bonding sort of way. You have to forget about them if they don't make it back. The one thing about being a corpsman is like, because there were times that you would have to, I remember I was stationed in Philadelphia, and a guy I went to high school with, when we were in high school, he was like a star basketball player. And he wound up in Philadelphia, just the same place I did. And I got an emergency call one day to go over to the barracks, and it was him. He was just dead. I don't know what he died from, but I was trying to bring him back to life because, like, it was like that. That was like, you can't die. We're not, don't die on me. And that was something you had to put out of your mind. You had to get it together, and because the next person's going to need your help too. And put that aside. And so in the Marine Corps, I got used to people close to me dying. Life goes on. And so that's one of those things where you just can't explain to anybody else. And that's cool. That was part of my military experience. I had to just take it in like everything else.
Yeah, I can relate to what you're saying. When we went through School of Infantry, the guys I was with, we had one of the instructors had this wall, and he called it the Wall of the Dead. And he put pictures up of each guy. He would keep track of all the casualties coming back. Whenever he saw somebody that he trained, he'd put a picture of them up on this wall, and the wall was surprisingly full. Because you don't think, Iraq and Afghanistan, you don't think there are that many casualties, but a few thousand people, only a couple of infantry training companies. They usually come from the infantry. But when we were going through, I looked at it and I was like, man, that's like kind of scary, but you're young and you're dumb and you don't realize what's about to happen to you.
Well, here's the thing. If you want to make it, you want to make it back. So what comes really important is mom, girlfriend. Those are the things that you're going to live for. Like if you got kids, if you're married, you want to get back to those kids. What happened with Afghanistan and Iraq was too many deployments. I feel so bad because they've been deployed more times than any other group. One shot of Vietnam was enough, and then somebody send me home for 6 months and tell me to go back and do it again. Like, no, I am surprised more people haven't just got up and left. I don't know. I have my own theories about why that went on like it went on, but and I don't see going to war if you don't plan to win it. And I don't think there was a winning plan. I think it was more like an oil plan. And so kids you come home and go back and come home and go back, and you wonder what's wrong with them. Try that one day. Try. Somebody put a M16 in your hand or M14 in your hand until you go knock down somebody else's door in somebody else's country, and then come back and be okay. All right, and then send them there 2 or 3 times. That's awful to me. I just cannot fathom that. At some point, it seems like you would just leave, go AWOL or something. You have to give today's vet a lot of props. He deserves it. I don't know. He's done. There's too few people doing too much, and I wish there was some kind of way. I wish we could just bring them on home. And if they have to go to someplace, it'd be a war that we go out to win, not for oil. You know, go out because it's a. When I was coming up, everybody thought the Cold War. Everybody was like, you know, the Russians are going to come, and they're going, you know, and we used to actually practice air raid drills, getting under the desk. I don't know if you ever seen that, or you know, all the kids gathered together. But we always thought that if we had to go back to war, it'd be World War II. After maybe a month or two, just bombing the heck out of each other. And, you know, that's how wars were fought. You know, a bunch of men, your men on this side, my men on this side, let's go crash together, and whoever's left wins. Yeah, it doesn't work that way anymore. These kids have to be smarter. They have to take a lot more chances. I have no telling what they've been exposed to. I hope that as a nation, we do all we can to put them back in society where they belong, and not just dump them out there like they did the Vietnam and the Korean vets.
That's one thing that myself included have benefited greatly from. I don't know what this, an awareness of how Vietnam vets were treated, because everybody I've ever spoken to who's in Vietnam says the same. You know, I was there one day, and my day was up, and they put me on a plane, and a week later I was at home. I was out in Marine Corps or out in the military, just kind of at home drinking beer, like what just happened to me.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it went. They can't do it again. I'm afraid. They have children who are going to grow up. You're going to answer for that at some point, and you're going to need military again. The world's not going to be peaceful because we want it to be. At some point, somebody in Croatia maybe, or someplace that we're not even thinking about, is going to do something that's going to require a response from us. And until we appreciate the people that go to that to respond, because that's what we don't do. We just take it for granted. We just think like, okay, well, we got the best military. Go get them, boys. And that's 1% of our population. That's a small percentage of our population going to protect the rest of us. You don't understand your freedom until you miss it. So let somebody take it away from you, and all of a sudden you understand what it's all about. The people in the military know that from the time they get out of boot camp. They realize like, well, okay, I know what I'm fighting. Now, what you think you're fighting for and what you're actually fighting might be, that's up to our commander-in-chief in Congress. But you don't question it, you just go because that's what you want to do. You protect the mom and apple pie. You know, I don't care if you're an American, you can be Black American, white American, red American, but you're all there doing the same thing. You protect the mom and apple pie. And that's all there is to it. You know, you want to make sure that your children get to do the same things you did, play the same stupid games, and graduate from high school and go to a prom. And you don't want anybody to threaten that. So that's why you're in the military. And that's what everyone else has to really understand. You're not, and it's an all volunteer military. So they don't have to do anything. They want to do what they're doing. And we have to appreciate. They have to see it as a privilege, and we have to understand. We have to thank them for the privilege that they've given us, because one thing I do understand, after being all that time in the military and being out, I've been out of the military as much as I've been in the military. And I got nutty freedom now. I can do, I can do anything I want to do. And I've been to places, I've been in other countries and lived there and realized that they don't have that. They don't have that, we just got great freedom. That's all there's to it. And freedom is not free. That's all, and that's the bottom line. People have to realize freedom is not free. And it'll get, let somebody come and take some of it, and they'll understand. I've been to places, socialized countries, and they got limited freedom. We have nutty freedom. We can just do any old thing, and it's okay. And I hope it stays that way. I mean, like growing, I want my children to have as much fun living as I had. And I want it to be Christmases and Thanksgivings, and I don't want to think about it, or, I want the poorest child to have Thanksgiving turkey, just like the richest person's going to have. And that doesn't happen any place but here. Like here, poor people got color TV. Poor people got cable. It's like you don't realize how much you have until you lose it. And I don't want to lose it. And so I hope the military stays strong. I pray for the commander-in-chief, whoever he is. I've had commander-in-chiefs from, the first one was President Johnson, and when I got out, it was Bill Clinton. So I've seen a lot of commanders-in-chiefs. I'm hoping you gotta pray for them. Pray they make the right decisions. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm praying hard, like, please, 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 please. And because the person that's going to pay the price is nobody in Congress, nobody in the Senate. It's going to be some child that you saw grow up right here in Yellow Springs. And they're going to have to make the ultimate sacrifice. And so, that's what I pray for. I pray that the commander-in-chief keeps it together.
Yeah. You mentioned joining up to take advantage of the GI Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Were you able to do that in the end, or?
What happened was, the first time I got out of school, I got out of the military, and I went back to our state college, Jersey City State College. And the veterans there, they were all taking advantage of the GI Bill. But half of them, it wasn't enough money. Like, some of them needed housing. They couldn't afford housing on the GI Bill. Most of them dropped out. Nobody, most of them didn't finish school. It just wasn't enough to get you through. The ones that made it through got other help. I went back in the service, and the service sent me to school. I went to their laboratory training. It was through George Washington University. And it turned out pretty good because, that's what I wound up doing for the rest of my life. I got out of lab school, and that's what I learned to do. That's what I did for the rest of my life until I stopped working. So, I got a good education in the military. It's a good place to get an education because you get to study something and do it at the same time. It's also keeps you out of trouble because, you still got duty. You're still in the military. You still got to do those military things. And, instead of you're not out. When I was civilian and went to college, I was especially it must have been 1971, around that time period, and everybody was tripping on acid. You know, it was fun, but I wasn't getting anywhere. You know, we were at the time it was like the big disco era and really funny looking clothes and bell bottoms, and everybody was at the discotheque, and that was what was important at the time, you know, and trying to be really, really cool, you know, not be, you know, and you never talked about being that you had been to Vietnam because that would have made you unpopular. You would have been uncool, so you just never said anything. You know, you tried to grow your afro or whatever and put on your little bell bottoms and crazy clothes and go disco time, you know, and then soon Vietnam just got further and further back in your mind, and you didn't want to think about it because, like, why get yourself depressed, you know? Put on your disco, get up and go, and that was it, you know. So yeah, that was a crazy time.
Did you, so you never really talked about Vietnam then after you got back? You kind of tried to push it, just kind of...
I didn't want to talk about Vietnam. I couldn't, the way I see it, it's hard to, right now, to think about how it was to be 18 and how it was to be 19. And some of the things you did, you really don't want to remember. And that's the truth. That's just, you just don't want to remember. I remember getting up in the morning, and you're talking about Agent Orange and all those other good stuff. I remember watching bombs going off at night and waking up the next morning and taking it, and you smell burning bodies. And it was like, oh, good morning, Vietnam. You know, that's how it smelled. You just got up and like, oh my goodness. And all you could think about was getting back home. I want to smell cookies. You know, I want to smell mom's cooking in the kitchen. I don't want to smell this. So I want to put all that behind you. You would see some things that were just ugly, and you don't want to remember them. You know, you can't put that in a horror movie. One night, we would get from my command. We always get we call harassment fire, and harassment fire they would just lob mortars. And they weren't meant to hit anybody. They were just meant to keep us up and scared, you know, afraid for the next day. And Bear, this guy was a huge Indian, and we were getting hit one night. Mortar comes down and said, Bear jumps out of our foxhole and goes to grab it for a souvenir. Bear didn't make it. So it was like, okay, I don't want to, this first time I actually thought about it just now. There's a lot of things that I could probably think about that are really ugly that I had to push out of my mind. It's just like, I just don't want to remember the place. You know, I'm proud I went. I'm probably better off for it, but there's too much I don't want to remember. And it was just an experience I did. Nah, you know, I'm back. I'm good. You know, so that's all that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you do you think that those experiences, even like, obviously they changed who you were, but do you think they like, can you quantify how they affected your life? Have you really ever like thought of it that way?
Oh, a lot of times. The thing about it was, before I went, I was caught up in the civil rights movement. Whatever I was thinking at 17 or 18, I no longer thought by the time I was 20 or 21. I was still angry, still bitter, didn't know what for. But I knew that if I carried that out on the street, the only thing that would happen was I'd wind up in prison. and there's just too many of us in prison, especially in New Jersey. It can be a rough state. So I had to get out of that. I just wanted to live like everybody else. The East Coast has its own thing, and they think they rule the rest of the country, but they don't. And I wanted to live I just wanted to live like everybody else did. And everybody else I knew was in the military. So that's where I stayed as long as I could. And instead of having a bitter attitude, I learned how to make lemonade, take the lemons and make lemonade. I've met some of the just greatest people in the world. I worked for 2 presidents. I know I lived inside the Beltway for a while. I know what goes on there. But I've met people from India. And, God, I can't just people from all over, and just loved their company. Just enjoyed their company. I've met. Geez, I was in California. I met one of the Bin Ladens. Like I love showing off the U.S. to anybody who wants to see it. I want them to see it from the way I see it. So I may take somebody from, if I meet them in the military, from, I don't know, maybe somebody from Bosnia or something like that, and take them out to a ball game and show them how much, just everything that we do here. And I love showing off the country. I love this country. After living so many other places, I love it even more. And that's the bottom line.
If you had to, is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed, or can you think of anything that maybe like your final thoughts? I think our time's kind of drawing.
No, there's nothing that we've talked about, because there's a lot of it I just don't want to talk about. It's just there's a lot of things I can tell you in the time that I was in the military. There's a lot of things that I don't want to talk about. Things have to be done, and that's what you do in the military. You do the things that have to be done, and leave it alone. Otherwise you just be depressed. Too many veterans are just depressed, and people can't understand why they're depressed. They get depressed because they see things that they can't forget and don't know where to place it in their everyday life. How do you place this if you were in Afghanistan and you had to go door to door, and the person that you've been with for the last 6 months gets shot when you open one of those doors, you're going to see him getting shot in your mind over and over and over again until you figure out how to push that aside and deal with everything else. And that's where your family comes in at, because you have to push it aside, otherwise you won't function. We have to give these vets every bit of support we can, because they've seen things that you cannot imagine. They've been in a spot that you cannot imagine. They had to live a day-to-day life, and then you want them to come back and say, "Good boy," and walk off. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They actually need support. And we have to do a better job of supporting the vet. That's all there is to it. Otherwise, you're not going to have a military big enough, not a volunteer military, that's going to be big enough to support you or support your ideas.
Yeah. All right. I agree.
Yeah.
That was, yeah. It was interesting when you were talking about like people just kind of disappear, and I had similar situations too. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of different vets. It's been really like good for me to talk to older guys and hear how they kind of lived their life and functioned afterwards. Because it's interesting because everybody has different ways they went about doing it.
Yeah.
Different, I guess, strategies might be the word for it. Everybody just deals with things differently.
Well, we didn't have social media. Didn't know Facebook. Shucks, when I was growing up, there was only 3 TV stations. So it's we didn't have somebody feeding information to you because you're getting information so fast that you can't decipher what's important and what's not. It's just, and you can't believe everything you read anymore. You really can't. I thought Wikipedia was the best thing going. Then I realized that people could just put in added comments and stuff into history. And I was like, okay, so what do you trust? Who do you trust? So that's, like, it's a changing world. So we have to change with it. And it made it easier to put things like Vietnam behind you. When I have cousins that went to Korea, and I don't know how they put that behind them. That was a horrible war, and we don't give them no credit. They get no credit. They were just like, it didn't happen, and we went from Korea right into Vietnam. And then they did the same thing again in the 70s. It was like, because they were so hung up in other things, it was like Vietnam didn't happen. I remember in the 80s standing on the bus stop, waiting to catch a bus, and these people next to me started talking. I realized like they were speaking in Vietnamese. And it was the first time I didn't know how to react. I didn't know whether were they the enemy, or I'm realizing they're standing here and they're trying to become Americans. And I instantly had a bias against them because of being in Vietnam. And I realized, like, well, that's as bad as somebody in Arkansas having a bias against me because of my skin color. So you have to get over that. You have to really, really get over that. Because they're here and you can't, that's what you went there for. And here they are. And so, it's still something to get through. When I see certain things, I have to remember that was a long time ago and that's over. And we're here and we're together now. So that's how I see it now. And I wouldn't have saw it that way back then at all. I was too busy, whatever they said was right was right. Whether it was wrong, it was right. It's because that's what I was paid to do. That's why I was here. That's what I'm here to do. And so I have to get over my own bias that was fed by propaganda and get my thoughts on to where I really am and stop being, just get it right. So that's what I try every day. I try to get it right. The best way to do is I keep an eye on the kids, because the children will get it right. The generation that's coming up is smarter than we ever were. They'll get it right. They'll get it right. It's amazing. They don't have the same play freedom, but on an intellectual basis, they're sharp. They're really, really sharp, and I'm looking for the future.
Yeah. Really, really encouraging. I appreciate you being willing to talk to me.
Well, thank you.
I really do. I know that's not talking about some things isn't easy at all.
No.
So I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I want to give you this. We give it to everybody that will talk to us. It's just a
Oh, okay.
little coin from our project. And I'm sure your brother explained to you, we'll archive everything at the
Oh,
Library
yeah.
of Congress and everything. So it'll be there until, hopefully forever, until that place burns down or whatever,
Thank you. Well,
But one of the reasons